Hello, everybody. Okay, we're going to start in about 4 minutes. Joined a little early. Give people time to jump on. And tonight's topic is going to be the mom that just found out her child is an addict. Now what does she do? So this is going to be a very Hello, everybody. Okay, we're going to start in about 4 minutes. Very hard one. I can't tell. I can't tell when it's 7 o'clock. Okay, we got 3 more minutes till 7. Hey, Jared. I see you on here. Thank you for joining. And if I miss anything, please write and let us know. Everybody, please share this. This is going to be very, very informative. And it's going to give the families the ideas and things they need to ask rehabs, things they need to do for themselves. I want this to be a family event. So addiction doesn't just affect the addict, it affects the families too. And the more knowledge we have, the better it is for everyone. So this is why we wanted to start these. And I do want to put a fact out there real fast, just so it's just something to think about. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Understanding the Epidemic, an average of 130 Americans die every day from an opiate overdose. That includes prescription drugs such as hydrocodones, oxycodones, morphine, and codeine. Heroin is the #1 killer, and so is fentanyl. There is a other drug that they're adding, which is carfentanil. So we've got to get as much knowledge as we can get, so we understand this too, as well as what the addicts tell us. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As people join, they can catch up to what we've talked about. The first thing I want to say to a mom and dad who just found out their child is an addict, the biggest thing you can do at first, and it's my biggest saying, is breathe. It's a scary thing. You believe your child, if you don't get them help, that they're going to die. If you let them out of their sight, they're going to go use more. You feel like you have to lock down everything so nothing can be stolen from you. Let me just tell you this. When you find out your child is an addict, it's a long, lifelong journey for the addict themselves and for the families. So tonight, I'm hoping that I can give the families more information so you have it in the back of your mind and you're aware of things. So tonight I want to start out with first, when you first find out, you're going to feel some symptoms. You're going to have headaches. You're probably going to have panic attacks, anxiety attacks, depression. This is real. I don't want to sugarcoat anything because I want every family member, every friend, every loved one to know that just because you are feeling depressed or anxiety or you're having panic attacks about the loved one that is an addict, that's normal. It's normal. You're going to go through a process just as much as they do. But tonight, I'm going to try to stay focused on what do I tell moms and dads, grandparents, friends that have reached out to say, hey, I know somebody that wants recovery, but what do I do now? And this is how the hope dealers work too. The biggest thing that you need to do is learn everything you can about addiction. Everything. You can hit the internet and look up addiction, and you're going to be overloaded with information. But knowledge is the most powerful thing to have. And that is what we need the most as family members. Also, for family members, friends, loved ones, look up Nar-Anon. It's Narranon. That is a meeting that is held in areas for family members. You can go in there and you can sit and cry, you can yell, you can scream. Because the person, the family right beside you, feels the same thing you feel. And this is where you can talk about it openly. And I know when I ran the Nar-Anon meeting in Martinsburg here, which I'm thinking about starting it back up, we always told the families, when you walked in this door, there's no judgment whatsoever. We're in a small town. So my son could have bought drugs from your child, or my son could have sold to your child. We're not there for them. We're not there to condemn each other and blame each other. We're there to come up with solutions to help our children find ways for recovery. So Nar-Anon is a very, very good thing. Is a very, very good thing to attend. And if you can't find meetings, let us know, and maybe we'll be able to research and find maybe the closest one to you. Then there are Facebook groups for families. Amethyst Recovery Center from Florida has one. It's called The Addict's Mom. There's over 4,000 members. Beautiful, beautiful site. Gives a lot of information. Lets you go on and ask questions. It's a very, very good site. And there's others. There's others out there. My daughter-in-law found one for wives whose husbands were addicted. So there's all different kinds of groups out there too. One big thing I want to say, don't get caught up in the chaos of the addiction. You're going to see your child struggling. You're going to see your child planning and conniving and running here and running there and having to make sure they go to this place and, oh, I got to go meet this person. Don't get in it. Don't get in that chaos, because it will take you down too. You know, the one thing I always tell families is addiction doesn't just hurt our children. It hurts us too. And what I tell the addicts, you know, when they're reaching out for recovery, I tell the addicts, you've taught us how to react and how to not trust, how to question everything you do. So it's a learned behavior, and we have to work together in recovery. Biggest thing, and I've just learned this a month ago, self-care. You have to take care of yourself first. I don't care if it's meditation. I don't care if you have to go into a room and sit for 10 minutes in total silence. You have to do self-care. Go to the gym. Walk around your neighborhood. Do something that's for you. I remember it was probably about 6 years into my son's addiction. I have a counselor, a drug counselor, who's a very good friend of mine. And she made me go into her office. She saw that I was struggling. I couldn't even see it myself. And that one day I was in there, she looked at me and said, "Tina, what do you like to do?" I just sat there because I had lost me. I didn't know. I said, "Well, years ago, I used to cross stitch." And she said, "Why don't you now?" I said, "Oh my, I don't have time for that." She said, "You always have time for yourself." And about a month ago, I learned that. Working with the Hope Dealers and helping hundreds of addicts and families, I didn't take care of myself. And it put me into a depression. I'm pulling out of it, doing better now. And we're doing different roles now here with the Hope Dealers. So the biggest thing I just want to get out there is take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. Okay. Now we're going to move into a little bit more detailed stuff. And I see that we have Jared Adamo on here. Jared is one of the owners of Amethyst Recovery Center. And he and Ian Tracy have taught me a lot about the addiction side of things, the things you should ask rehabs, things you need to find out about before you send your children anywhere. So, if you've got a pen or paper, this is what I would like you to write down if you see it's helpful. When your child comes to you and says, "Okay, Mom, I'm an addict. I need help." What do you do now? The biggest thing that you can do is research rehabs before you send them. And these are some questions I've researched. I've done it out of my own. What I asked when we started the Hope Dealers, what I asked when I was trying to find a rehab for my son. The first and foremost question I always bring up when I'm talking to a rehab center, I ask them, "Are you accredited? Do you have accreditation? Are you licensed? What certifications do you have or your staff has?" Now, I will tell you this. The Joint Commission of the Commission of Accreditation or Rehabilitation Facilities, it's an acronym. These two entities are independent. They're nonprofit organizations, and they base the accreditation on industry performance standards and demonstrates results, qualities, and values. So if a rehab tells you, "Hey, yeah, I think, Jared, it's JC, I forget what it's called now, shoot, the accreditation." But if they say, "Yes, we have an accreditation with the Joint Commission of Commissions," that's good. Because this is not another rehab coming in and checking a rehab. This is an independent company that comes in. Now, I can say this. Florida is one of the states that has, this is almost like a requirement if you're opening a rehab. So if you reach out to one in Florida and they say they're not accredited, I would not send my child there because that means no one has come in to check them. There's a lot of dirty playing when you do rehabs. There's body brokering. A rehab can pay somebody $2,000 and says, "You come to my rehab, you relapse, you go back out, you come back in. I'll give you $2,000 for that. And what it is it plays with the insurance companies. So just check that out. What accreditations do you have? What certifications or license do you have? State licensing is different in each state. So kind of figure out what you need. Research, research, research. I can't say it enough. Then you ask about your staff's credentials and license. Here's a question to ask. Are you a dual diagnostic center? What's that mean? Dual diagnostic means they do mind, mental, and they also work with the physical side of addiction. My son, with his addiction, is borderline bipolar, and he fights depression. We wouldn't have known that if he didn't go to a dual diagnostic center for his rehab. So they have psychiatrists, psychologists, different people there for a dual diagnostic center. Not every addict needs dual diagnostics. You just have to know your child. What type of program do they provide? Is it 12-step? Faith-based? Is it medically assisted treatments such as Suboxone, Methadone, Vivitrol? That's a good thing to know. Next one is beware. If a rehab center tells you right away, we have 100% success rate, don't believe them. There is no rehab that has that magic cure. That is my opinion. A rehab works if the addict works the tools they give them. Now, I want you to understand that, because I can tell you the first time I sent my son to rehab, I thought he was going to come home and be cured. We weren't going to deal with addiction. It was going to be gone and done. I learned real fast. What the rehab does is teach them tools and things to do so they learn how to fight the addiction themselves. Very good information to know. Next question to ask. What insurance do you accept? Are you in network? Out of network? Do you take state Medicaid? There's a lot to do with the insurance part of it. Ask about, what about your deductible? Do I pay the deductible? Have them explain it. And if it's a good rehab center, they will stay on that phone with you and explain everything to you. They also have what's called self-pay. They will make an agreement with the addict once they come into their center to get $5 a month sometimes. So I don't want to say let that be your choice of which rehabs you pick, but just know there's all different types out there. The next one, does your rehab include detox? Detox is a 5 to 10 day program where they work to get the poison out of their system. The drugs out of their system. I'm sorry, I call it poison. And a lot of rehab centers require them to, once they start attending their rehab, that they have to test clean, no drugs in their system. So that means they have to have a detox first. So find that out. There are rehab centers that work with detox centers, or they have their own, and they say, yes, we detox them here, and then they move into the next phase, which is the rehab part of it. Ask them too, if you don't have a detox center, does that mean my loved one is going to another facility first? How far is it from you? Know where your child is, no matter what. Okay, the next one. Do they have specialized programs? For example, Recovery Unplugged is a rehab center that we have used for one of our clients. They specialize and using music, instruments, art for their part of recovery. The client that we sent there loved to sing and play the piano, and that helped through the process of recovery for that person. The next question, how long is your program? How long will my child be at your facility? That's a big question, because sometimes they might only be a detox, so they're only going to be there 5 to 10 days. Or they might only be a rehab, which is PHP, which I'm going to do another series on to explain all that, where they stay in the facility itself and they can't go out into the public. That could be 28, 30, 35 days. That's good to know where, how long is your program, so you can see how long your child's going to be at that facility. Okay, then ask them, say, what about post-treatment? Will you help them with a plan once it's time for them to come home? There are facilities that do that. A lot of them call it home plans. And they automatically say, okay, you need to find a sponsor, find your NA meetings. There's different things that they look at. And I'll explain that in a later live. What about family support? Does your rehab offer that? There are some that offer family workshops. I know where my son went, and I don't mean to give kudos to Amethyst, but I like the way Amethyst did it. They have family weekends where when your child is in their center, the families go down for a Saturday, and you are in counseling. It's beautiful. It benefited my son, my daughter-in-law, and my granddaughter. And one day I'll tell you that story, how that counselor really, really opened up my daughter-in-law's eyes to how addiction pulled my son away. She understood it a lot better. Another question here is, how long have you been providing treatment? Remember to research this. If a program has been around for a long time, they have a credibility. Beware of the newly opened centers. Now, I'm not saying all of them are bad, because I know a couple that have opened. We're getting ready right now to open one here in Martinsburg. As long as they have credentials, they have certificates, check that stuff out. Ask them. And one other big question. And this is one that I didn't ask the first time my son went away. But I learned from then on I needed to ask it. If my child decides to walk out of your program, what happens? Now, I will tell you this, and this is for even every addict out there that needs to hear this. When you are in a program and you have joined to do their tools, learn from them, when you choose to walk out, you are choosing the addiction over recovery. That is one hard thing for a mom to say to their child, you're on your own. Now, I will tell you this, when my son was at a couple of the rehabs, he called me and he said, Mom, I can't do this. It's hard. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. Which I'll do another live on this too, because there's some stuff that you need to know that you're going to hear and you're going to say, wow, Tina's right. They did say it. The biggest thing you can tell your child is where you are right now is to save your life. This is your fight. It's not my fight. So if you walk out, you're making that decision and you have to do those consequences. So it's hard. Trust me. I've been there. Okay, so those are the questions I came up with for any family members or anyone that's looking into rehabs. I think they're pretty intense. I think it would give you a good feel about the rehab centers that you're thinking about sending your child. Okay, I want to go to another side of this. Parents, loved ones. There are things, learn what you cannot control. Most of the things that come with addiction. That's hard. I'm very controlling. I like to show my son the path he needs to go, that I want him to go. But with addiction, you learn that they have to find their path that works for them. One thing that I know families hate to hear, relapse is part of recovery. That is the hardest, the scariest thing ever, is relapse. I always prayed that my son, once he relapsed, knew what recovery was and would go right back to recovery. My son learned every time he relapsed more and more about himself, which was good. And bless my son's heart, he always says, "Mom, you throw me under the bus." I don't mean to. I'm just trying to tell his story as a mom from my side. My son has been to rehabs 5 times. So we have been struggling. He's got a year clean now. He's doing beautiful. He has learned a lot from his last relapse. And he went right back into rehab. He went into intensive counseling, and they helped him find the things that were his biggest triggers. So that is huge, because I'm telling you, the first time I sent him away, I knew he was coming home and he was going to be cured. But that isn't how it works. And the one thing families need to understand is addiction is lifelong. It doesn't go away in a year. It doesn't go away in 5 years. It doesn't go away in 10 years. It's just if they've learned the tools they need to beat it, to stay above it, they get better and better and better. And the longer they're clean, the longer they're in recovery, the stronger they get. So just know that. Here are some tips that I found on the internet, and I thought they were pretty good ones, with dealing with your child that you just found out is an addict. Understand the addiction. If you can, sometimes they won't tell you what they're taking, what they're using. Learn about it. When I found out my son was an addict, I went to NA meetings. I sat in there. As long as it's an open meeting, they allow you to come in. Now, you can't say anything, you can't speak, but you learn so much just sitting in a room and listening to them talk. Learn about what's out on the streets. Learn about, you could go to the health department and say, what drugs, is in this area. Here in Martinsburg, West Virginia, they're telling us now meth is coming back. They seem to see a lot more people on meth, and the new drug Molly. Molly is a synthetic drug that doesn't pop on drug tests, but it gets them high. So a lot of them are going that route because they know they have to go get drug tested, but they're still coming out clean. So just learn this stuff. Learn about addiction. Improve your communication with your child. It won't be easy. At first, trust me. Oh no, my son avoids me. Don't always focus on the negative. That is the worst thing to do. Because I'm telling you, when my son used, it took him down. He beat himself up more than what I ever could. Because he was, like my CEO Lisa always says, we never, when our babies were born, we didn't hold them up and say, my wish for my child is to become a drug addict. That is not it. And they've been taught right and wrong. And my son struggled with that when he knew the addiction took over and made him do things that he normally wouldn't do, just so he wouldn't be sick. State that you know they are using. This is my biggest thing I tell families. When families reach out to us, to the Hope Dealers, and ask, tell us, hey, I've got a loved one, I know they're using, can you help them? First thing I tell them is, don't keep it in the dark. Tell them you know they're using. Tell them you know they're high. Call them out. They're going to get mad. They're going to tell you you don't know what you're talking about. But do it, because addiction loves to stay in the dark. And when you call it out, you bring it out. Talk recovery. When you tell them you know they're using, you know they're high, say, but you know what? There's help out there. And if anything, you can say, I just met 3 women who will help you. Because I'm telling you, families, when you reach out to us and tell us that you have a loved one that is an addict and wants help, we have to hear it from the addict. If the addict is not ready, and this is hard to swallow, if that addict is not ready for help, you can force them, you can court order them, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, they'll sit through a program, but until they're ready to do the work that it takes, they're not going to succeed. So we always tell families, please tell your addict child to reach out to us, and we talk to them. So you can tell your child, I may not know what to do, but these 3 ladies do, and they'll help us. That's huge. Talk recovery. Tell them it's possible. It's hard, but they can do it, and they're worth it. And then ask, how are you doing? The thing is with addiction, we don't want to face it. We don't want to deal with it. I ignored it for a while. I thought my son would just get over it. But it doesn't work that way, especially with addiction. It is a sad, sad, sad fight and struggle on the addict side and the families. So ask them, how are you doing? How's your day? Sometimes that's all it takes. Now, this is what I want to tell the families. Set boundaries. The biggest thing I tell mom and dads is if you want to do this for real and you want to get your child to wake up and say, man, mom and dad's learned a lot. One thing I always say is set a boundary of, you don't come to my house if you're high. Addicts know when they're high. They know when they're breaking it. It's almost like telling a child, don't put your hand on that stove because it's hot. It's going to burn you. You're going to have the ones that listen. You're going to have the ones that say, ain't going to burn me. Shh, and it burns them. Same thing. Set the boundaries. It's your house. If you don't want the drugs there, say it. Let me see. Encourage positivity. Talk recovery. I can't say that enough. Constantly talk recovery. Send recovery quotes. You can get them on Pinterest. There's thousands of them. Send them. Encouraging words. The one thing I always told my son is, you know what? I love you. but I don't like the addict. I want you back. I want my son back, the one I know that is in there, that knows he needs the help. So, son, sorry, you have to do the work. You have to go through the pain. You have to do it. I wish I could have. I remember falling on the floor, begging, just let me do it. Let me take it for him. Let me take the pain. Because I would do anything for my son. So, just set boundaries, talk recovery. Present treatment options. Reach out to rehabs. Get to know them. You know what? Some rehabs will even let you come and check them out. Do it. Get into NA meetings. Get to know people that are in recovery. Tell your child, I know somebody, I met somebody tonight at an NA meeting who is in recovery and they would love to meet you. At first, they're not going to like to hear it. They're not going to want to do it. The Hope Dealers work with a lot of addicts. A lot of recovering warriors is what we call them. The ones that are in recovery. Sometimes the biggest thing they tell us is, with you three, you don't judge me. You don't tear me down for what I've done. You give me hope. You show me there is possibilities that I just have to suck it up and do. Sometimes that's all they need to hear. My son lost so many friends. So many friends. And I get it. They didn't want to see him. They didn't want to be around him. But you know what? Sometimes he just needed that friend. To say, dude, how can we help? Tell me what I need to do. If it wasn't for my daughter-in-law, I'm not even sure my son would be here. My daughter-in-law has lived through this since she's met my son. And she loves him. But, my daughter-in-law had to get to the point where she told him, you know what, either you get help or we're done too. So, boundaries. Set them. Acknowledge that your child is an adult. And it's time they act it. It's time they take responsibility for what they've done. People always say, addiction is not a disease, it's a choice. Yeah. I agreed with that statement at the very beginning. It was my son's choice to use drugs. But then the drugs took over. And it became a disease. And it is a disease that my son fights every day of his life. So, it's not like, I always use the example, and everybody says they're tired of hearing it. It's just like somebody has diabetes. The doctor tells you, don't you eat that piece of cake. But I'm going to set that piece of cake right in front of you every day. And you know what? Eventually, you're going to eat it. Even though you know it's going to make you sick. Eventually, you're going to eat it. It's the same thing with addiction. But there are drugs that are so rampant. It's just a sad thing. One last thing. Love your child. I know we all do. We love our children. I cried and cried for mine. Love them. They're still here. They're still breathing. And while they're still breathing, there's hope for recovery. It's real. You just got to tell them, I love you, but I hate this addiction. And this addiction is destroying you, and it's destroying all of us. But let's work as a family, and let's get help. All of us need help. Trust me, all of you need help. The addiction is just not to the addict. It's a ripple effect. My granddaughter is dealing with it. My daughter-in-law deals with it. I deal with it. My parents deal with it. It ripples. But it's still your child. Still love them. Tell them you believe that they can do recovery. And if they slip and they relapse, that you're going to be right here beside them to help them get the tools they need again. Don't ever give up. Now, there are times I tell parents, set your boundaries. Well, that means I'd have to kick my son out. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to get them. And everybody's bottom's different. But sometimes that helps for them to wake up and say, this isn't the life I want anymore. All right. I'm done talking. I hope this was good for everybody. I hope everybody learned a lot. Please just learn about addiction. Learn about all of it. Recovery is possible, and it's out there. And there's people that will help. And just please remember us. The hope dealers are here. Even if it's a mom that just needs to talk. So, I love you all. I thank everybody for coming on. I hope everybody shares this. Get this information out. Next Tuesday, I'm going to do one on enabling. What does it mean when you enable an addict? And let me tell you this. When I first started researching and finding things out about addiction, and my son didn't like it very much. Because mama talks it all the time. So just keep fighting for your child. They're worth it. They are so worth it. Their life is just as important as anybody else's. And just because they're an addict does not mean you have to turn your back on them. So please talk recovery. It is possible. Next week, hope to see everybody. Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Talk with Tina Tuesdays. See you then. Bye.